The crowd gasped as the sound cracked through the rose garden. Lady Constance's hand struck Evelyn Harper's cheek with a force so sharp it echoed across the manicured lawns. Conversation died instantly. Teacups froze in midair. Laughter collapsed into stunned silence as the young woman staggered one step to the side, her face burning, her dignity shattered in front of Boston's most powerful families. Before anyone could speak, before anyone could intervene, a tall man stepped forward from the edge of the gathering. The Duke of Weatherby caught Lady Constance's wrist midair. His grip was calm but unbreakable. He leaned close enough that only she could hear him. "That," he whispered, voice low and cold, "was your last mistake." Evelyn barely registered the words. Her world was still spinning, her cheek throbbing, her heart pounding so hard she thought others might hear it. The garden party blurred into color and motion as shame, shock, and disbelief crashed over her all at once. Only hours earlier, she had been alone in her father's study, clutching his old silver pocket watch and wishing she had the courage to change her fate. Now, fate had found her instead. 6 months earlier, Evelyn's father, Edward Harper, had been buried on a quiet hill overlooking the Hudson River. The estate he left behind had once been a place of warmth, learning, and purpose. After his death, it became a cage. Evelyn still retreated to his study whenever she could. That morning, she stood by the window as pale autumn light crept across the room, touching the mahogany desk and the leather-bound ledgers stacked just as he had left them. The scent of old paper and pipe tobacco clung faintly to the air. She turned the pocket watch over in her palm, tracing the engraved words she knew by heart. "Time reveals all truth, my darling girl." "Does it?" she whispered into the silence. "Because all I see is how powerless I've become." Her father had taught her everything he knew: estate, crop rotation, contracts, tenant rights. He never treated her as less because she was a daughter. He had trusted her mind and encouraged her questions. "You think sharper than most men I know," he had told her once, spreading maps across that very desk. "Never let anyone convince you otherwise." Now he was gone, and everything he had built was slipping through her fingers. The door burst open without warning. "There you are." Lady Constance's voice cut through the room like a blade. Evelyn straightened at once, schooling her face into calm. Her stepmother stood framed in the doorway, dressed in deep plum silk that suited her cold beauty too well. Every curl of blonde hair was perfectly arranged. Every movement was measured. "I was reviewing the tenant accounts," Evelyn said quietly. "You have no reason to," Constance replied, sweeping into the room. "Your father indulged your little interests." "I will not. He taught me," Evelyn said before she could stop herself. Constance's eyes hardened. "Your father is dead." The words landed like a slap. She picked up one of the ledgers, flipped through it with exaggerated boredom, and dropped it back onto the desk. His outdated ideas died with him. Evelyn clenched her hands. "The tenants' rents are overdue. The Northfields—" "The estate manager handles such matters now," Constance interrupted. "And so do I. Which brings us to the Duke of Weatherby's garden party." Evelyn's stomach tightened. "I don't wish to attend." "You will," Constance said smoothly. "Henry Whitmore will be there." The name sent a chill through Evelyn. She had met him twice. Both times his eyes had lingered on her not with interest, but calculation. "I have no interest in him." "Your interests are irrelevant," Constance replied. "Until you marry or turn 25, I control this estate. 3 more years, Evelyn." Or, one suitable match. 3 years felt like a lifetime. At breakfast, Constance criticized everything: Evelyn's posture, her dress, the way she buttered her toast. Even Beatrice, Constance's quiet daughter, dared to speak once in Evelyn's defense and was silenced with a glance. Later that morning, Constance produced a letter from the family solicitor and dismissed him without explanation. She replaced him with a man Evelyn did not trust. "You have no allies," Constance told her coldly. Mary Whitmore, and this ends. Defy me, and I will make your life unbearable. Evelyn had agreed to attend the garden party because she saw no other choice. By the time the carriage arrived at the Weatherby estate, she felt hollowed out. The gardens were famous, stretching in perfect patterns of roses and stone paths. Guests in pastel dresses and tailored suits filled the lawn with laughter and polite conversation. From the terrace above, Alexander Weatherby watched the arrivals with practiced detachment. He despised garden parties. At 31, he had inherited his title after his older brother's sudden death, and with it came expectations he never wanted. He endured social gatherings out of duty, not pleasure. 70 guests so far, his estate manager and closest friend said beside him. And at least 4 mothers asking if you intend to dance? Alexander sighed. One day I may flee west and become a ghost. Then he saw the Harper carriage. He straightened without meaning to. He had known Edward Harper well. The man had been honest, intelligent, and rare in his refusal to flatter titles. He had spoken often of his daughter. The woman who stepped down from the carriage did not match the image Alexander carried. Evelyn Harper moved gracefully, but her eyes were downcast. Her gray dress was severe. Lady Constance's hand closed around her arm in a grip that spoke of ownership, not affection. "That isn't right," Alexander murmured. Below, Lord Whitmore approached them with a self-satisfied smile. Alexander watched as the interaction unfolded. He saw Evelyn's tension, the way she answered politely but without warmth. He recognized the posture of someone trapped. When Evelyn excused herself and walked toward the rose garden, Constance followed, her expression dark with fury. Alexander did not hesitate. He crossed the lawn quickly, propriety forgotten, just as Constance's voice rose sharp and cruel. "You forget your place, girl." He broke into a run. The slap rang out moments later. Alexander reached them just in time to catch Constance's wrist before it could strike again. "That was your last mistake," he said quietly. The garden froze. He turned to Evelyn and saw the red mark blooming on her cheek, her eyes wide with shock. "Lady Evelyn," he said gently, "would you walk with me?" Constance sputtered in outrage, but Alexander's attention never left Evelyn. She hesitated only a second before placing her trembling hand on his arm. As they walked away through the stunned crowd, Evelyn realized something profound and terrifying. For the first time in 6 months, someone had seen her pain, and nothing would ever be the same. The doors to the Weatherby house closed behind them, and the noise of the garden faded into distant echoes. The cool air inside felt heavy and unreal, as if Evelyn had stepped into another world entirely. Her heart still raced, and her cheek throbbed where Lady Constance's hand had struck her. Alexander guided her through a wide corridor lined with portraits of men and women who looked as if they had never known fear or powerlessness. He stopped in front of a private study and opened the door. "Please," he said, his voice calm but firm. "Sit." The room was warm with dark wood and shelves of books that reached the ceiling. Sunlight filtered through tall windows, casting soft patterns across a pair of chairs near the fireplace. Evelyn lowered herself into one, her posture stiff, her hands clenched in her lap. Alexander poured 2 glasses of amber liquid and handed one to her. "It will help steady you," he said. She accepted it without protest. The warmth spread through her chest, easing the shaking in her hands. "I owe you an explanation," she said quietly. "What you saw was not the first time." Alexander sat across from her, not behind his desk, not above her, but level. He did not interrupt. He simply listened. For the first time in months, Evelyn spoke freely. She told him about her father's death, about how Lady Constance had taken control of the estate, about the dismissed servants, the sold land, the threats of marriage, and worse. "I am not weak," Evelyn said, her voice breaking despite her effort to remain composed. "But the law gives her all the power." Alexander's jaw tightened. "The law does not excuse cruelty." She laughed bitterly. It excuses it every day. Silence settled between them, heavy but not uncomfortable. I knew your father, Alexander said at last. He asked me to look after you if anything happened to him. Evelyn looked up sharply. He did? Yes. I thought he was worrying unnecessarily. I was wrong. Something in her chest loosened, and tears slipped down her cheeks before she could stop them. I don't want charity, she said quickly. Or pity. You have neither, Alexander replied. What you have is time, space, and legal protection. For now. The word now hung in the air. That evening, Evelyn was shown to a guest suite overlooking the gardens. It was larger than her room at home, brighter, and untouched by Lady Constance's presence. A housekeeper brought cold cloths for her cheek and spoke to her with gentle respect, not fear. When Evelyn was finally alone, she stood at the window and looked out at the fountain where everything had changed. She pressed her father's pocket watch to her chest. Time reveals all truth. What truth would this reveal? The next morning, Evelyn woke without dread. No sharp knock, no voice telling her how to dress, how to sit, how to exist. She dressed herself and walked downstairs, following the scent of coffee and warm bread. The breakfast table held more food than she had been allowed in months. She hesitated, then filled her plate without apology. Freedom tasted like butter and hot coffee. Over the following days, she discovered the library, shelves filled with books she had only heard of. Political essays, history, science. She read hungrily, as if reclaiming stolen time. Alexander joined her often. They spoke of land management, tenant rights, and reform. He did not lecture, he debated. He challenged her ideas and welcomed hers. You should be running your own estate, he told her one afternoon. I intend to, she replied, when I am allowed. You are allowed, he said. We just have to make it legal. The letters began arriving soon after. Lady Constance's handwriting was sharp and familiar. Each letter accused, threatened, and manipulated. She demanded Evelyn return home at once. She warned her reputation was ruined. She hinted at doctors and confinement. Evelyn's hands shook as she read them. Alexander read them too. She is desperate, he said. That makes her dangerous. He summoned his solicitor and began preparing documents. Investigations into the estate's accounts revealed discrepancies too large to ignore. Meanwhile, gossip spread through society. Some doors closed. Others opened. Lady Margaret, Alexander's aunt, arrived and made it clear she stood firmly at Evelyn's side. She struck you in public, Lady Margaret said sharply. I saw it. That alone ends her influence. 2 weeks after the garden party, Lady Constance arrived at Wetherby with a magistrate and Lord Whitmore. They claimed Evelyn was unstable. They claimed she needed protection from herself. Evelyn listened, her heart pounding, as false accusations filled the room. Then she stood, calm, clear, unafraid. She dismantled every lie with dates, witnesses, and letters. She produced proof of financial fraud and secret agreements. Alexander's solicitor revealed forged signatures and stolen funds. Lady Constance's composure shattered. The magistrate withdrew his support. Lord Whitmore fled in shame. Lady Constance was escorted from the house in silence. When the room finally emptied, Evelyn collapsed into a chair, trembling with relief. You were remarkable, Alexander said softly. For the first time, she believed it. But freedom came with questions. She was safe. She was respected. She was seen. And yet, something between her and Alexander had shifted into dangerous territory. They walked together through the gardens that evening, the air cool and golden. I cannot stay here forever, Evelyn said. I know, Alexander replied. She stopped and faced him. I need to learn who I am without fear, without rescue. His expression held admiration, not disappointment. Then go, he said. Build your life. If what exists between us is real, it will remain. Her breath caught. She nodded slowly, For the first time, she was choosing herself. And somewhere deep inside, she knew this was not an ending. It was the beginning. Evelyn left Weatherby 3 days later. The carriage rolled away beneath a pale morning sky, wheels crunching softly against gravel. She did not look back until the estate gates came into view, tall and unyielding, then slowly disappeared behind a curve in the road. Only then did she allow herself to turn. Alexander stood on the terrace, hands clasped behind his back, watching until the carriage vanished from sight. He did not wave. He did not follow. He honored the promise he had made. He would not cage her with kindness. Harper House felt unfamiliar when Evelyn returned. It was the same house, the same walls, the same study, yet everything had changed. The servants greeted her with open relief rather than fear. Mrs. Fletcher, the old housekeeper dismissed by Lady Constance months earlier, took Evelyn's hands and wept openly. "You're home," she said simply. "And you look like yourself again." Evelyn felt it too. The estate was hers now, fully and legally. No guardian. No shadow hovering over her decisions. The responsibility was immense, but instead of fear, she felt purpose. She began immediately. She walked the land with the tenants, listening more than she spoke. She inspected fields, barns, cottages. She reopened accounts, reversed unfair contracts, and restored wages that had been quietly cut. Mistakes were made, corrections followed. People noticed. At first, the farmers watched her cautiously, unused to being asked instead of ordered. Then trust began to grow. "She works like her father," they said, "only sharper." In the evenings, Evelyn sat in her father's study and wrote letters to Alexander. She told him about drainage repairs and crop yields, about her frustration with stubborn ledgers, and her triumph when numbers finally balanced. She wrote about learning to lead without hardening herself. His replies came steadily, never urgent, never demanding. He spoke of Weatherby, of reforms he postponed until she challenged him months earlier, of how quiet the library felt without her arguments echoing between shelves. They wrote as equals. As months passed, Evelyn accepted invitations to London. Some doors remained closed, but others opened wide. She met women who lived boldly outside society's narrow expectations, widows who ran businesses, writers who published under false names, ladies who believed change was not only possible, but necessary. They welcomed her. "You survived," one said. "Now help us make sure others don't have to." Evelyn flourished. Still, at night, she sometimes held her father's pocket watch and felt the steady tick beneath her fingers. Time reveals all truth. What truth was time revealing now? The answer came quietly. One afternoon, as she stood in the south field watching children spill out of the small schoolhouse she had funded, laughter ringing through the air, the realization struck her without warning. She wished Alexander were there. Not to guide, not to protect. Simply to witness. The thought did not frighten her. It grounded her. That evening, she wrote a different letter. Not cautious. Not measured. Honest. "I am happy, truly. I am strong. I stand alone without fear. And yet every joy feels incomplete without being shared. I think that is how I know." Weeks later, the Hartfield ball filled London with candlelight and expectation. Evelyn arrived alone, her posture confident, her gown deep blue, her presence unmistakable. Whispers followed her across the floor. "She's changed." She's fearless. She refused 2 proposals already." Evelyn smiled politely and did not care. Alexander arrived later, escorting his aunt, his expression unreadable until his eyes found Evelyn across the room. The distance between them closed slowly, deliberately. No rushing, no rescue. Choice. They spoke first of ordinary things, of harvests, of books, of politics. Then, As the music softened and the room faded into background noise, Evelyn met his gaze fully. "I chose myself," she said quietly. His voice was steady, but his eyes shone. "And I chose to wait." She smiled. "Now I choose you." The kiss they shared was not stolen or desperate. It was witnessed, accepted, final. When Alexander announced their engagement moments later, there were gasps, then applause. Some faces held surprise, others approval. None mattered. The wedding was small, intentional, honest. Evelyn wore cream silk and her father's pocket watch, its inscription pressed against her heart as she spoke vows written in her own hand. Not obedience, not surrender, partnership. When she walked beside Alexander through the Weatherby Gardens after the ceremony, past the fountain where everything had begun, she felt no bitterness, only gratitude. Time had revealed all truth, that strength was never given. It was claimed, and love, when chosen freely, was the greatest freedom of all.